As has been explained, I'm a director at Newcastle Airport. Newcastle is a public-private partnership between 7 local authorities who own 51% of the shares in the airport, and Copenhagen Airports who own the other 49%. So it's a public-private partnership as well as, an international partnership as well as public-private. And you'd be interested to hear that of the local authorities, Sunderland City Council is the largest of the 7 shareholders, followed by Newcastle. So, despite the rivalry within the North East on the footballing field, with the Tyne-Wear derby just last weekend, despite that rivalry, there's a great partnership in place between the local authorities for the airport, and we've worked really hard to build the airport up over the years. In 2010, we celebrated our 75th anniversary, and the whole region really got behind the airport to celebrate it. Those 75 years have been a long, hard struggle. Delivering air services in a region like the North East is a tough call. We haven't got airlines queuing up to come in. We're queuing up to the airline's door to try and persuade them to come in. We have to do very, very competitive deals, and we have to demonstrate that there's enough demand for their services to be viable. But notwithstanding all of that, we, over those 75 years, built it up in terms of passenger throughput to 5.7 million passengers in 2007. Now, 2007 is significant because just after that we had Northern Rock, and then all of a sudden everything went in the wrong direction. But it also was a time when the government were starting to crank up air passenger duty. And seeing that it was generating lots of money for the exchequer. And that's one of the big problems we've got with this argument, that the government, as Willie Walsh, I'm sure some of you have heard of Willie Walsh, the boss of British Airways, said the government's hooked on APD. The amount of money it's generating, they need that money in order to fill the hole. So that's one of the problems that we're encountering. So we got to 5.7 million in 2007. Then there was the downturn, and then APD really started to crank up. And this year, if we do well, we'll handle 4.4 million passengers. So that is the impact that the economy and APD have had on this airport. And if you were to ask me, well, how much is it caused by APD and how much is it caused by the economy, I would say that it's probably half and half. They're both very significant impacts. And Newcastle is a typical regional airport. We're 11th in terms of size in the UK. We are typical. We've got a mixture of traditional scheduled, and by that I mean the hub carriers. We've got British Airways. Some of you might have flown up, I don't know. In the conference guide there was how to get here by bus, walking, car, train, but not air, which was a bit of a disappointment. But nevertheless, some of you will have flown, so thank you for doing that. A region like the North East needs its connection, so the more people that use them, the more we're able to fill those planes, but also having both sort of flights to the key centres and train keeps the train fares competitive. There isn't a monopoly, so there is competition. So we've got the scheduled carriers like British Airways to Heathrow, KLM to Amsterdam, we've got Air France to Paris. Then we've got the low-cost airlines. And we've got a holiday charter, and it's about a third. And people go, well, it's not very good for the environment. People all go jetting off on holiday. Well, in a region like the North East, where times are very tough, that week's holiday in the summer, the fortnight's holiday, is what drives the productivity of the workforce during the rest of the year. If you tell them they're not going to go on holiday, then all of a sudden things start to really go into a downward spiral. And of course, in terms of the income sources of a regional airport, they're our bread and butter. We make all the money from the holiday makers, and that then lets us get the airlines in to do the scheduled services. So those scheduled services were complemented in 2007, and this is the bit that I think you'd be particularly interested in, with the acquisition of Emirates. So we really, we went against the tide and secured Emirates just before the downturn, just when before everyone went pear-shaped. And critically, just before air passenger duty went up. If we had been trying to get Emirates now, we wouldn't stand any chance at all. People say to me, well, with APD, how come Emirates have done all right? Well, it's because we got them in. We got them bedded into the region. They spent an absolute fortune on marketing within the region. They're sponsoring Durham Cricket Club, so they're reinvesting in the fabric of the region. And that has opened up for the BME communities, for businesses, all of those connections to the east. I mean, I see the customers checking in for Emirates every single day because it's a plane in and out every day. And I would say probably about a third are going to some of the community areas, you know, India,
Yemen.
Pakistan,
Yemen,
yeah, the Far East, you know, a whole load of different areas that are of critical importance in terms of these connections. We've been able to work so closely with that airline that, you know, we were delighted a week or so ago to announce that they are going to be operating from the 1st of September the Boeing 777 on the Newcastle route. So it's going to go up from 278 seats to 428, and that's very exciting, but also a bit scary, because as APD keeps cranking up, there's a risk. There's always a risk there that all of a sudden it's gone. And you can imagine the impact, all of those connections that have been delivered, and all of that infrastructure in terms of businesses, people, friends, relatives, that builds as a result of that service, builds up over the period of time that it's been growing, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And people think, well, what are we going to do now? So that's the potential consequence of APD continuing to go up. I mean, you'll all be aware, or most of you will be aware, that the government consulted on air passenger duty last year, and we all put our inputs in. They looked at the banding, which was the critical issue in terms of this debate, and you know, we heard rumours that they were going to go for a 2-band, and then right at the last minute they didn't, for whatever reason. So, you know, that's been closed off for now, but I think it will be brought back onto the agenda, certainly. We in the North East were arguing for the regions to be considered, and for the government to consider whether the more peripheral regions with weaker economies may be justified a lower rate of air passenger duty, so that we could stimulate growth in the regions and get more services. And actually there could be a sort of side benefit for some of the longer haul connections, that if the government do decide that they are prepared in the regions to consider a lower rate of APD for long haul services, then we potentially could get a long haul route to the west to complement the Emirates service, which then connects on to lots of places in North America and in the Caribbean, that is going to be cheaper than the other alternatives because the taxes are at a lower rate. You know, Darren mentioned Northern Ireland. The finance bill is now going through Parliament, and it includes the legislation on the devolution of APD to Northern Ireland, but it's only long haul. That's right. It's not short haul. No. Now, if you add into that mix what David Cameron said about a fortnight ago about, well, we'll throw lots more into devolution to Scotland in order to stave off the threat of an independence vote, and i.e. he throws in APD as being a devolved power to Scotland, and it's long haul based upon what's been said in relation to Northern Ireland, then you can see an argument for a tidier way of doing this being looking at all of the regions rather than just Scotland, and that's something that we'll be arguing for. So I think at the moment, kind of a few doors have been closed, and I think it's a case of just forcing them open again, because I think we all know that this is the right thing to do, that it's a regressive tax. And actually one of the things that the industry is going to be crafting, and hopefully it will come up with the right, well, I'm convinced it will come up with the right answer, is if you lower APD, you'll generate so much economic activity that the tax take, and you said that the government are hooked on APD, it's 2.5 billion or something?
It's going up to 3.8 billion.
3.8 billion. But if you reduce it, you stimulate demand in such a way that you raise more of the other taxes. So there's a bigger tax increase as a result of a lower rate. Anyway, that's a regional insight.
Thank you very much.
Right.